بسم الله وعلى بركة الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أدى الأمانة وبلغ الرسالة ونصح الأمة وجاهد في سبيل الله حق جهاد جزاه الله عنا أوفر الجزاء. Sisters and brothers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be talking to you this afternoon on this topic of the sources of knowledge in Islam and how they should be integrated. I will start by giving you an overview of what I'm going to say, a summary of what I will say, then I will go into the details. Islam recognizes two major sources of knowledge. There is knowledge from revelation called ilm al-wahy or ilm naqli, and this is the highest in quality. And then there is another source which is empirical experience, ilm aqli. It's more in quantity but less in quality. Now, ilm naqli and ilm aqli have got the same divine source. The ilm naqli comes directly from the books, al-kutub, al-munazzala, or through the messengers, al-rusul. And ilm aqli, the empirical knowledge, is through our human intellect and empirical experience. These two sources are complementary. They complement one another because in a sense, they are from two books and the two books are from the same creator. There is Kitab al-Wahy, the book of revelation, which is Quran and Sunnah. And then there is Kitab al-Kawn, the book of the cosmos, of the environment around us, from which we get science and other empirical knowledge. So that's why they are complementary, because they share the same source. Now, there is no contradiction between ilm aqli and ilm naqli. If there is a contradiction that appears to you, it is because there is something wrong. Either the observations are not done well, or the human intellect fails to interpret what it sees correctly. But I need to point out, although both sources are needed and are important, ilm naqli is the only source of evidence on moral matters. In moral matters, we refer to ilm naqli, Quran and Sunnah. We do not refer to science and experimentation. Now, let us talk in detail about ilm naqli. Ilm naqli is transmitted knowledge or revealed knowledge. It's suprahuman. It comes from the creator. As I said before, it reaches us through the agency of a prophet or the books. Now, there are two sources of knowledge that everybody accepts as sources of ilm naqli. It's the Quran and the Sunnah. Quran is the primary source and Sunnah is the secondary source. There are, however, other sources of knowledge that are discussed, but there is no unanimity about them. Not as sources of knowledge, but whether they are sources of knowledge independent of the two that we have mentioned above. Examples of this are ilham, direct inspiration. As Quran says, alhamaha fujuraha wa taqwaha. Allah can put knowledge by inspiration into somebody. Ru'ya, dreams, could be a source of knowledge. Now, dreams are of three types. There is ru'ya rahmaniyya. This is a dream from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is true knowledge. But also there are dreams that are from shaitan, ru'ya shaitaniyya, false knowledge. There is also ru'ya manamiyya. This is a dream when you go through what happened during the day and you see it as a dream. So we can never be sure when someone says, I have dreamt something, we can never be sure what type of dream. This is why there is controversy on these as sources of knowledge. Hadas intuition. Some people intuitively can tell you something, but they have no evidence for it. There is what you call natural instinct, al-ghariza, al-ilm al-jabili. For example, when a new baby born is born, a few minutes after being born, when you put the baby to the breast of the mother, they can start feeding. Who taught them what to do? This is instinctive knowledge. There is also knowledge that is called kashf. This is among the Sufis. They say that you can reach a certain stage of spiritual development when knowledge is open to you, just like that. So, as I said, the two primary sources of ilm, naqli, Quran and Sunnah, everybody agrees. These other sources, there are discussions about them. Now, the Quran is unique in that it has been preserved textually for 14 centuries. It's written exactly as it was written at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And this has been proved archaeologically. People have found old scripts of the Quran on stones, on skins, and it's always the same. Nobody has ever found a script that is different from what we have. This shows that Quran has been protected, it has not been changed. Sunnah is a bit different because the writing of the Sunnah didn't start until 2 or 3 centuries. And so we have a special discipline of ilm al-hadith to check and grade the accuracy of what comes to us as Sunnah. So they have graded the Sunnah. There is Sahih, which is the highest level, like Bukhari's book and Muslim's book are called Sahih, this highest level. But there are other levels that are less than that. Mutawatir means a hadith that has been reported by so many people through so many channels that there is no chance that it could be wrong. Now, ilm naqli from the Quran may be direct, ayatun bayinat. Most of the time the Quran says exactly what it means. But a few verses are allegorical, mutashabihat. They require the use of our intellect for full understanding. And this process is called ta'wil. Now, make sure you understand that ta'wil doesn't mean you reinterpret. No, it means you use intellectual processes to reach the intended meaning of the Quran. The Quran is very comprehensive. It covers issues of aqidah, issues of legislation, ahkam, issues of empirical realities. It talks about the sun, the moon, the water, the animals. It talks about history. قبلكم ما كان قبلكم. It talks about what is happening now. ما كان بينكم. And then talks about what will come بعدكم in the future. We need to understand the Quran. When Quran talks about some events in a historical sense, but you can see those events in your daily life. So this is a Quranic commentary on today, not on history. Quran has got empirical verses, ayat kawniyya, that encourage us to observe. We need to observe our bodies, anfusukum, and we need to observe al-afaq, the environment around us. And this is where science comes from, because science is studying the human body and is studying everything available in the universe. Quran encourages that a lot. As I say, Quran is the primary source of ilm naqli. Sunnah is a secondary in the sense that it doesn't bring new principles. It expands, it elaborates, and gives examples about the general principles of the Quran. Now, there is no contradiction between Quran and Sunnah. They completely agree. When there is some contradiction, then there's something wrong in the understanding. And the scholars have got ways of solving that. But if we are not sure, the Quran predominates. Now let us talk about the second source of knowledge, which is aql, ilm aqli. Now before I go on to talk about what is ilm aqli, I want to explain a usual meaning of this word aql. The word aql is used also as part of a continuum. A human being is dual. We have got a dualistic nature. We've got a physical body, but also there is something else besides the physical body. This is the essence of being a human. This essence manifests in several ways, as Quran has indicated. It can manifest as aql, which is intellect. It can manifest as the soul, nafs or ruh. It can manifest as the heart. This is a moral heart. It's not the anatomical heart that you have in your chest. Also, there are other terms of similar meaning like nasiya, lub, dhihin. So, aql has got that meaning, part of the essence of a human being. But what I'm going to talk about is different. I'm talking about ilm aqli. This is knowledge that comes from human reasoning, rational knowledge, or comes from human observation and experimentation, empirical knowledge. Now, rational knowledge that comes from reasoning is not primary. Usually, you reason about something. Either you got it from wahy or you got it from observation. Now, the Quran has encouraged us to think, to use our mind, to use our intellect, at-tafakkur, wat-tadabbur. The Quran also has encouraged us to look, an-nazar, wa-basar, to look around us and get knowledge. And the Quran calls for evidence-based knowledge, hujjat al-burhan. The Quran says, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانُكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring your evidence to prove that you are saying the truth. The Quran also talks about sababiyya, causality. I want to emphasize that the whole purpose of scientific research is about causality. We want to see the relationship between things. There is a medicine and there is a disease. We do research to see what is the relationship between that medicine and that disease. Because once we find the causal relationship, then we can make use of that medicine. We can also study causality when there is something causing ill health. Once we know the connection, the causal connection between the two, we can eliminate it. So science is about sababiyya, and Quran talks a lot about sabab. So Quran, in a way, is an encouragement of scientific research and technological development. And if we read it from that perspective, we will understand it in a very different way. Continuing about ilm aqli, our religion is a practical religion. Your iman cannot become complete unless it is manifested in actions, unless we see things that you do. But it happens that there is a cyclical relationship. The actions that we do also come back and support and enhance our iman. So acts of ibadah increase our iman. Now, let me give you some examples of this. There is the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 260, with قال Ibrahim, Rabbi arini kayfa tuhyi al-mawta, qala awalam tu'min. Ibrahim said to Allah, Ya Allah, show me how you bring back the life from death. So Allah said, don't you believe? Qala bala, he said, I believe. Walakin yatma'inna qalbi. I want you to show me in a practical way so that my heart can be calmed. So Allah told him to carry out an experiment. قال فخذ أربعة من الطير, take 4 birds, فصرهن إليك, hold them close to you. And there is something, a secret in this one. ثم اجعل على كل جبل منهن جزءا. Then he said, kill them and break them up. And he throw different body parts of these birds on different mountains. And then he says, ثم ادعوهن, then call them. يأتينك سعيا, they will come to you. And actually, the birds came back to Ibrahim. You know why Allah told him to hold them close to his body? So that they can pick up his smell and be able to locate him. وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. So in this way, Ibrahim's iman was strengthened by a scientific experiment. There is also another example of science and experimentation increasing our iman. Ibrahim alayhi salam, before he was guided, he was looking for Allah, for the God, the creator. He looked at the moon. فَلَمَّا رَأَى الْقَمَرَ بَازِغًا قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ قَالَ لَإِن لَمْ يَهْدِنِي رَبِّي لَأَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. When Ibrahim saw the moon, he said, oh, this is big and bright. This must be God. But when it disappeared, he said, no, a God cannot disappear. Then he saw the sun. فَلَمَّا رَأَى الشَّمْسَ بَازِغَةً. When he saw the sun, قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي, said, this is God, this is my God. هَذَا أَكْبَر, this is even bigger. فَلَمَّا أَفَلَتْ, when it disappeared, قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ إِنِّي بَرِئٌ مِمَّا تُشْرِكُونَ, said, no, this cannot be God and I cannot accept it. إِنِّي وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِيَ الَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ حَنِيفًا وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Then, after this experimental observation, Ibrahim turned to the one creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm trying to say that ilm aqli, or experimental knowledge, observational knowledge, actually increases our iman. There are many verses in the Quran called ayat kawniyya that about empirical realities. Now, the word ayah has got two meanings. The word ayah means a sign that there is a great creator. So we have got two types of ayah. There is ayat Qur'aniyya. These are the ayah, the signs in the Quran. The Quran is an intellectual miracle. When you read the Quran, you will realize that there is a great creator. So they are signs of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from reading the Quran, understanding it intellectually. But also, they are ayat kawniyya. They are other empirical signs about the majesty and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we get this from studying science. We, for example, study the human heart. It starts beating in the 8th week of intrauterine life and doesn't stop even a minute for 60 years, 70 years, 100 years, whatever life Allah gives you to live. It's a miracle. It has got a very accurate electrical conduction system. It beats in unison, and it's a very small organ. So when you study the heart, it's a biological miracle. And you should realize that behind its creation, there must be a creator. In fact, all scientists are supposed to be believers. But it happens that many are not. Because as the Quran tells us, إِنَّهُ لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ, it's not the eyes that go blind. وَإِنَّمَا تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبَ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ, it is the heart inside that goes blind. A scientist may see all of these biological miracles with his eyes. The external eyes can see, but when the internal eyes do not see, he does not believe. Now, I want to talk about the history of science in our ummah, because there is a lesson in it. The early Muslims were driven by the spirit of the Quran that talked about evidence-based observational knowledge, because Quran tells us to look at the moon, at the sun, at the camels, at the animals. It opens your eyes to the book of Allah that is lying around you. So they were very interested to go on to research and understand the environment. But the problem is that at that time, they translated Greek books. Now, Greek philosophy and logic somehow discouraged many forms of experimentation and observation. And my thinking is, if the Muslims didn't come into contact with the Greek ideas, they would have developed great science, which would have survived until today. But I need to mention that also the Muslims benefited from Greek science. And they did experiments and observations and added to this science. And it is them who took it back to Europe after the Middle Ages. And this is what catalyzed the Renaissance. Now, we had another problem from our contact with the Greeks, that some of their philosophy entered into our ummah, and it caused confusion even in matters of aqidah. And that is why the scholars developed the ilm al-kalam, or theology, which was necessary in order to clean the aqidah of these ideas that came from the Greeks. But the impact was big because some people arose to be Muslim philosophers. They were following the philosophy of the Greeks, and others were traditionalists. They said, no, we not listen to the Greek philosophy. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali was a great scholar. He studied the philosophy and he later turned against it and wrote a book called Tahafutul Falasifa, The Incoherence of the Philosophers, because he said, no, this philosophy is not good. So the Greek ideas influenced this debate. People started talking about aql and naqli knowledge. And unfortunately, a few people emphasized aqli knowledge, empirical or rational knowledge, more than they should have done. There were many arguments, and one of them is by Fakhruddin al-Razi. I'm showing it here on the screen. I won't go over it in detail, but eventually Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh al-Islam, he came and criticized the views of Muslim philosophers who had been influenced by the Greeks. And what he said is that there is no contradiction between naqli and aqli. There is no contradiction between transmitted knowledge from Quran and Sunnah and aqli knowledge from observation and reasoning. And he wrote a book called Dar'u Ta'arud al-Aql wal-Naql. So he used rational arguments supported by the Quran to make the point. It's a very long book and it's very interesting. And we rely on it to make the thesis that aqli and naqli sources of knowledge cannot be contradictory. In other words, science and Quran cannot be contradictory. If there's a contradiction, it's because it's apparent, not real. It may be because of misunderstanding. Now, the conclusion of Ibn Taymiyyah was that clear aql, clear empirical or rational knowledge, sarih al-ma'qul, does not contradict correct naqli knowledge, sahih al-manqul. So this is the great conclusion that he made. But also we could have reached the same conclusion from the Tawhidi paradigm, because since all knowledge is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is from the same source, the same creator, it cannot be contradictory. The picture here, this is the book of Ibn Taymiyyah. It's a very big book made of 6 volumes that made the argument that aqli and naqli knowledge are not contradictory. This is volume 2, volume 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, I have said that ilm aqli, which is the empirical knowledge or rational knowledge, does not contradict ilm naqli, knowledge from the revealed sources. But I want to emphasize that there are some things that only ilm naqli, only the knowledge from Quran and Sunnah, is the source. You cannot get them from science. Moral precepts, you cannot get morality from experimentation. You cannot get ethics from experimentation or from reasoning. Also, some future events can only be told by ilm naqli. Now, ilm naqli is also necessary to provide the conceptual framework for scientific research. It provides purposiveness, gha'iyya, that when we research, we must have a purpose. It provides the evidence base, al-burhan, that our research must be based on evidence, objectivity, not to be swayed by our whims, and also ilmun nafi', doing research to produce useful knowledge. So these conceptual ideas are needed for all our scientific work. And when we talk about integration of knowledge in the next slide, we talk about bringing these ideas from ilm naqli to the area of science and experimentation. Now, I want to mention that the word aqli, a long time ago, referred only to rational knowledge, knowledge that you get from reasoning. But today, it also includes empirical knowledge, the knowledge that you get from experimentation and observation. Research actually is part of ijtihad, and the researchers get ajr reward for their work as much as when people make ijtihad in fiqh and other religious sciences. Now, we need to do more research in order to develop technology and develop our societies. Now, let's now talk about the integration. Epistemology is the science of the philosophy of knowledge. Islam calls for an integrated epistemology. It is a philosophy of science that combines aqli and naqli together. It is the philosophy that combines the two books, Kitabul Wahy, the book of revelation, and Kitabul Kawn, and the book of science and technology and experimentation. Now, remember, as a human being, if you don't follow what is in the naql, in the book of Wahy, you are punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Quran and Sunnah tell you to do something. If you don't do it, you get punishment. But you don't get punished by Allah for not following Kitabul Kawn, the science. The punishment, you get self-inflicted harm. If you have a disease and you don't choose the right medicine, you harm yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. He said, we will not punish people until we send a prophet to them. So, ilm naqli has got to be obeyed fully, otherwise there is punishment. Now, how can we combine the two to get maximum benefit? Integration of knowledge is a project that we are carrying out in many countries of the world. In this project, we use inputs from ilm naqli, from Quran and Sunnah, and we input these in the empirical disciplines of knowledge. So this integrated knowledge will be a great catalyst for research. And I want to show you some of the teaching materials that we have developed in different parts of the world as a result of this integration of knowledge. That people write books, like in Bangladesh, books about normal disciplines that you study at school and the university with ilm naqli, or the input, the conceptual input from the Quran and Sunnah. This book is about financial accounting. It has got conventional and the Islamic approach. This book is about fundamentals of finance. They have got the Islamic approach put in the book. It also contains everything that you study about finance in the university. This is about financial markets. This is about marketing. This is about total quality management. This is history. This is communicative Arabic. This is the family institution, public administration, history, legal theories, value education, even Shakespeare. They have read Shakespeare from an Islamic perspective. This is accounting. So what is going on is that right now in the Ummah, the integration is going on. There are many universities that are teaching the two sources of knowledge in an integrated way, and there are many schools teaching the two sources of knowledge in an integrated way. Let me show you some Malaysian books. This is about creative thinking, again, integrated. This is English literature, integrated, worldview, civilization and history, ethics, and Islamic values, al-qiyam al-islamiyya. This is knowledge management, accounting, and sociology and anthropology, Islamization of literary studies. So the future is going to be integration. We need an integrated epistemology. We need integrated knowledge. We need to work together to integrate aqli and naqli. The model we have today is that of the secular model that has only aqli and doesn't have naqli. And this is part of the problem for Muslims and the part of the confusion among many people. But inshallah, the civilization and culture are beginning to change. And I hope and pray that many of you will take part in the research grants that we have to enable writing, teaching materials that integrate aqli and naqli knowledge. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.